The rain had arrived early in Mumbai that evening, veiling the city in a silver curtain that danced across windows, soaked streets, and whispered against umbrellas like a long-lost lover's breath. At Chhatrapati Shivaji Terminus, the usual clamor of trains, vendors, and announcements filled the air, but none of it seemed to reach Aanya. She stood still amid the chaos, her gaze distant, a single train ticket clutched tightly in her hand. Her suitcase leaned silently against her leg, and her heart, fragile, worn, but still beating, was trying to convince her that this was the right choice. Leaving Mumbai wasn't an escape. It was an ending. A soft, reluctant full stop to a story that never got its final page. That story's name was Kabir. She remembered everything, his laughter echoing in the bookstore they both loved, the way he'd smudge ink on his nose while sketching, the way his fingers always found hers without looking. They had fallen in love like two songs overlapping, slightly out of sync but somehow harmonious. He was a painter of forgotten things, old buildings, rain-streaked windows, empty cafes. She was a writer of half-told truths and poems that bled emotion. Together, they were a masterpiece. And then, one morning, he was gone. No note. No explanation. Nothing but a kiss on the forehead the night before and the memory of him brushing a strand of hair behind her ear as if to say, "I'll be back." Only he never returned. For months, Anya's life unraveled slowly, cruelly. Days turned into nights she barely noticed. Friends tried to comfort her, but none of them could understand how it felt to lose someone who wasn't dead but might as well have been. Then, almost a year later, a letter arrived, plain envelope, her name written in his handwriting that she knew like her own. Inside was just one line, "Forgive me. I had no choice." That was it. Over the next several months, more letters followed. Short. Vague. Full of apologies and longing, but never reasons. Never truth. She hated them. She treasured them. She cried over each one, and still, she couldn't let them go. But today was the end. She was boarding train 11 to Delhi, where a new life awaited, a job at a publishing house, a rented studio apartment, a city where Kabir had never touched her world. Coach C, seat 23A. A window seat, of course. A seat to stare out at the world and leave memories behind. She climbed aboard, the fabric of the past tugging at her heels. Her seat was quiet, untouched, and she settled in with the heavy sigh of someone who had finally accepted the ache inside as permanent. She didn't cry anymore. Tears had long since dried into words she never got to speak. Then came the sound of rushed footsteps. The train had just begun to move, slowly pulling away from the platform. She didn't look up until the figure stopped right beside her. And when she did, the world stilled. Kabir. He looked older, like he hadn't slept well in years. His hair was slightly longer, a trimmed beard shadowed his jaw, and his eyes, those deep, soulful eyes, were the same. Still the storm she'd never stopped dreaming about. Aanya, he said her name like a prayer and a punishment in one breath. She didn't move. Couldn't. "What are you doing here?" she finally managed to ask, her voice paper thin. "I found out you were leaving. I had to come," he replied. He gestured to the empty seat beside her. "May I?" Before she could say no, or yes, he sat. The train rattled forward, the city of their memories beginning to fade behind them. "You had 2 years to come," she said coldly. Her arms folded across her chest, but her heart betrayed her with every racing beat. "I know," he whispered. "And I'll never forgive myself for them. But I want to explain." She laughed bitterly. "Explain what? The magic trick where you vanish for 2 years and send cryptic postcards like some broken-hearted ghost?" His eyes dropped to the floor. "My father," he said softly, "was dying. Cancer. Stage 4. He didn't want anyone to know. Not even me. By the time I found out, he had less than a year." She stared, stunned. "Why didn't you tell me?" Because you would have stayed, he replied. You would have put your dreams on hold, followed me to hospital rooms, and I couldn't let you do that. You were just getting started, your poetry, your career. I thought if I left, you'd hate me and move on. She blinked, and the weight of his words sank in like stones in water. So instead of trusting me, you decided for me? Her voice cracked. You broke both of us. I know, he said again. But I loved you too much to be the reason you lost yourself. She pulled out an old, weathered notebook from her bag, thick, leather-bound, with pages filled with their memories. This is what I carried every day. I wrote poems I never shared, stories you never read. Even when I hated you, I still loved you. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a pencil, short, scratched, chewed at the top. You gave me this our first week together, he said. I used it until it was nothing but a stub. Couldn't throw it away. They both laughed, a quiet, broken laugh that knew how to ache. Silence hung between them like mist on glass. Then he looked at her, eyes filled with everything he never said. I never stopped loving you, Anya. I just didn't know how to keep you without hurting you. She turned toward the window again, watching the rain race past. You hurt me anyway. I know, he said. But I came to ask if you'd let me try again. Not as the boy who left, but the man who finally learned how to stay. She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she opened the notebook, flipping to a page filled with his sketch of her face, beside a poem she'd written the night he vanished. She handed it to him. He read silently, his fingers trembling as they touched the page. I'm not the same person anymore, she said quietly. Neither am I, he replied. But maybe that's a good thing. The train hummed forward. Somewhere outside, the storm had slowed. Inside, two hearts, once shattered, now searching, sat side by side. Okay, she said at last. One more chapter. But no more lies. Only truth, he promised. And for the first time in years, Anya believed him. Speech balloon, have you ever been given a second chance at love? Or waited for someone who disappeared? Tell us your story in the comments below. If this story touched your heart, like, share, and subscribe to Whispers of Love 2 Hearts for daily tales that stir the soul. Don't forget to hit the bell icon to never miss an update.